My next guest is Pamela McCloud Lima, the Executive Director for the New Bedford Women's Center. I was noticing, are you just now at the Women's Center, Pam? Is that what we're talking about?
There's a legal name, and then there's the name everybody knows us by. Right. So our legal name actually is New Bedford Women's Center, Inc., and always has been. But we have expanded our service area and our reach, and so we've become known far and wide as the Women's Center. And even when I first came to the agency 15 years ago, I would call someone up and ask for a donation or something, and they would always say, "Oh, the Women's Center, of course, the Women's Center, yes." So it really seemed like that had become our name.
Sure.
So that's what they call a DBA, a doing business as name. But we are formally, legally, because it's so hard to change these things, and especially in within the system that we work. So we are still New Bedford Women's Center, Inc., but we provide services in Somerset, Swansea, down to Wareham. So we like that we have our mothership, so to speak, in New Bedford, and that is our focus, but we also want those other communities to know that we're there for them too. And sometimes when you're in Fall River and you call yourself New Bedford anything, they think, "Oh, I have to go to New Bedford for that." And as you know, the cities of Fall River and New Bedford are interesting in that they seem to be so far away for some people. And so it seems like really a trial, and we want them to know that actually we have services right in Fall River. We do have an office there and so forth. So, it's been a reality of who we serve, but also the people that we serve really came up with that name more than anything. So we are the Women's Center.
The organization has been raising awareness for many years about issues like domestic violence, offering also programs like safe houses and protecting women and children from violence every day, and some other programs too. Why don't you give us an overview?
Well, I always say that the Women's Center is, of course, we're a domestic violence agency, we're a rape crisis center, and we're a child trauma program. But most importantly, we're a social justice organization. So where social justice intersects with all of those issues is at the line of poverty, lack of education, and social justice. So that's a primary interest for us, is sort of leveling the playing field for everyone, so everyone has equal access to services. And at the same time, of course, our mission is to make sure that victims of both sexual and domestic violence know that there's a place that they can come for services, for help, for support. And it's really just the beginning when you walk in our door, because, of course, we have therapy, we have therapeutic counseling, we have group counseling, individual counseling. But we also, our tagline is the door to a future free from violence, because we also connect people with housing, we connect them with career training, we help them to get daycare and housing, and put all of those things in place that help them to have a future free from violence where they are independent and self-sufficient, and then can make choices about who they let into their lives that have to do not with needing someone to help them support their life and their children, but have to do with someone who really is a good match for them.
October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's a month that your organization is very much involved with several programs. It's not too soon to shed some light on that. We've been talking about that problem for a long time. Have we been getting any headway here on the South Coast?
Well, I think we're
Give me something positive.
I think we are making headway in that people at least now know the services are there. I believe that we also have made some headway in terms of the number of homicides nationally. There's still way too many people that lose their lives to domestic violence, but we're able to talk about it now. That's a big thing. When it was secret and no one talked about it, then far many more people got injured, lived in fear and in violence. And we're able to talk about domestic violence now and have the conversation and talk to people who may know people who are living in domestic violence and help them to get help for their friends or loved ones. And I think we are making some headway. It's a problem that's been with us for many, many, many years. And so it's not something, it takes a sea change to change it. And sea changes don't happen overnight. And yes, we've been at this for 44 years almost, but we're still in there fighting, and we're there for victims. and we're working on the prevention and education end as well, so that people do continue to know what to do if someone they know is in a domestic violence situation.
You mentioned that you work in schools. What are the programs? What do those look like?
Well, we have different curricula for schools, and we go into all schools. We go from primary grades all the way up through high school, also in college. So we have different curriculum for every kind of need. And they're all age appropriate. So you're not going to use with someone in first grade what you would use with someone in high school who are already dating and may have already experienced an abusive relationship. So we have very targeted curriculum that's been, most of it has been tested by the CDC for its efficacy, for its usefulness. And so we target to the age group what we would use. We use everything from Nan Stein's curriculum to the Safe Dates curriculum, to the MVP curriculum, which is Mentors in Violence, that came out of sports programs. So we target it to the school and to their needs and to how much time they can devote. Sometimes they want us to just come in and do an assembly. We're happy to do that for awareness, but that is not something that will make a change in the school environment. That requires more dedication of time and effort. So we can do any kind of program designed specifically for that school.
Are you working the time and effort? Is it being put in area high schools? And schools got to have to request it, I would imagine.
Well, they have to request it, and as I said, they have to have time for it, and it's a challenge because they have they have MCAS, they have a lot of things breathing down their neck that they have to do just to meet the standards of the school. But this is very important because if someone is living in domestic violence at home or is in a dating relationship, it affects their school attendance. It affects how they could be doing very well in school, and all of a sudden there's a slide in both their attendance and their grades. And very often that can be tied to either a dating relationship gone bad or something that's going on in the home. So it's a really important issue to bring to schools to let them know that it is something important to devote time to.
And you're ready to make it adaptable, to make changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
as I said, we work with the school to fit their needs, both with age-appropriate curriculum, but also within the time that they have available as well. We do recommend more of a concerted effort than just an assembly or two. But at least with an assembly, you have a chance to get your information out there. They have a chance to know that there is help. They have a chance to maybe listen and think, I wonder how, if this relationship, some of those things they're talking about seem to be present. So maybe I should think about that. So it's not without its merit to do just an assembly as well.
You're listening to Townsquare Sunday. My guest is Pamela McCloud Lima, the director of the Women's Center, located in New Bedford. How is the Women's Center funded?
Well, I always say we have a patchwork quilt of funding. And part of that patchwork are individuals and corporations and foundations, because the bulk of our funding comes from federal and state money. But they require us to match that because they want to know that the community supports us. So I tell people every time they give $10 to the Women's Center, it goes into that pool. So every time we raise $1 million, we have to raise $250,000 in order to get that million. So we have to raise a lot of money, and every donation is important, and we are so fortunate to be supported by our community. We have groups that come to us and say, we want to do this event that will benefit the Women's Center. Or I got a group of people together and I got them to give money to the Women's Center. And we have such wonderful, wonderful supporters, and that's a really important part. But there's no question we are dependent on state and federal funding, and those lines of funding still being there. And we're very grateful as well to our local state reps and senators. Senator Montigny, in fact, put an earmark in the budget for the Women's Center. We're hoping it goes through, because sometimes those earmarks get penciled out by the governor because they're very vulnerable. They're kind of sticking out there. But in this particular case, this would help us to do more prevention and more services, and really important for our area. So it is a big quilt of funding, but every piece is important to provide cover.
Concerned about the federal funding, given the budget debate that's about to begin and the present climate in Washington.
Absolutely very concerned about it. Absolutely concerned. I don't know what will be. Some of our money comes from something called VOCA, the Victim of Crimes Act, and that's a really important piece of funding. And again, that could be very vulnerable in the federal budget. We are very concerned. We're not concerned about our representatives. I mean, they're all right with us. They have defended VOCA down the line. They have defended our funding down the line. But nationally, there's a different temperature going on out there, and we are very concerned about that. We're concerned for victims. We're concerned for the most vulnerable in our society, whose voices are seemingly not being heard very well right now.
And any cut would be a serious cut, but clearly that cut in that area would be significant.
Absolutely, because not only do federal funds come directly to us, but also some of our Department of Public Health funding, a piece of that is federal. We get funding from MOVA, the Massachusetts Office of Victims Assistance, and that is VOCA money. So that comes from the federal government to them and then to us. So it actually shakes out to being a lot of our funding.
Yeah, it would be traumatic.
Absolutely traumatic, and it would be devastating for victims in the area.
How can people help the Women's Center? How can the average person who may be listening say, hey, we've got to make sure that is properly funded?
Well, for one thing, make sure that you have the information on hand to help victims. That's very important, to make sure that you can pass on the information. Come to our events, support our fundraising efforts. We really, as I said, we have wonderful groups of citizens that get together. You know, one idea that people had some time ago was to have like a dinner party at their home, have their friends over and ask them each to give a check for $30 or $50 that would go to the Women's Center. You can do little bits, and it helps. We had a young girl last year that ran a lemonade stand for us, and I mean, she was just a youngster, and that we have absolutely such admiration for the people that do that and to volunteer. So much so that our annual meeting this year is really dedicated to honoring volunteers and the part that volunteers play, not only for the Women's Center, but in our society in terms of changing lives for people in need. And we've seen that with what's going on in Houston.
All right. I think we'll end it there. I'd like to thank Pamela McCloud Lima for coming in today. She is the director of the New Bedford Women's Center, and she's speaking to us about the Women's Center, some of the programs they're involved in. October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yes.
You'll have a number of events there, including...
we have a tree lighting ceremony, which kicks off the month to remind people that people lose their lives every day to domestic violence. That's on October 3rd at 7 p.m. in front of City Hall. And then we have our vigil, which is the most important event on the 24th of October, which again starts off at City Hall at 6 o'clock, and we march to the Unitarian Church on Union Street, and we have a ceremony to remember the victims of violence.
A somber event, but one that is very much needed. Pam, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim, for having me.
And that's this week's edition of Townsquare Sunday. It couldn't happen without WBSM production director Jason Kent, who gets the show on the air, and digital producer Casey Sylvia, who makes sure these interviews are posted on our website, WBSM.com, and the WBSM page on Facebook as well. Thanks to both. And join us next Sunday at 6 a.m. for Townsquare Sunday. If you missed the show, all of the interviews can be heard by visiting WBSM.com. I'm Jim Phillips. Have a great week and a wonderful Sunday.